Welcome to episode 31 of Book Nerd Paradise, where we get to know an author as they tell us one of their favorite quotes, read from their work, pose a trivia question, and give away a book or two. Hi, I'm LRW Lee, author of the Andy Smithson Epic Fantasy Adventure series. As I've mentioned in the past, if you haven't done so already, please feel free to download your free ebook copies of both the prequel, which is Power of the Air's Passion, as well as book 1, Blast of the Dragon's Fury, in the Andy Smithson series. Both are available on Amazon, Google Play, and Barnes & Noble. Today, we welcome YA fantasy author Alon Shalev as our guest. Born and raised in England, Alon lives and writes in two worlds. He's the author of a young adult fantasy series, as well as several other books he wrote out of his passion to help people, a passion which is rooted in his teenage years campaigning with the anti-apartheid movement for the release of Jews from the Soviet Union. In 2005, he moved to the San Francisco Bay Area, where he works for a global human rights organization, the American Jewish World Service. In 2009, while on a family camping trip in Northern California, Alon began writing his epic fantasy series to read to his sons around the campfire. Over the next 3 years, both sons and the ancient redwood forest bore witness to the summoning of the Wycann Masters. His first epic fantasy novel, At the Walls of Galbraith, won the Eric Hofer Book Award and was a grand prize finalist. Please join me in welcoming Alon Shalev.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. Thank you so much. You'll be reading from your first YA fantasy novel, At the Walls of Galbraith, which is the first book in your Wycann Masters series. So that we can get a feel for the book, would you give us a brief synopsis?
So the first book describes the story of a young elf. He desired only to follow in his mother's footsteps and become a healer. But when the emperor's army attacks his village to punish traitors and conscript youth, Shinhai flees to the mountains, seeking safe harbor with an uncle he has never met. He is shocked as many people sacrifice their lives to ensure he reaches a Wycann Master, an enigmatic woman named Mari, who can teach him to wield a powerful death and life magic that might just free the races of Odyssea. In a world defined by strict racial boundaries, where humans rule, dwarves hide deep underground, and elves are a slave nation, Shinhai must find a way to create friendships and trust unheard of since the fall of the Wycann Masters, and reunite the races into an alliance that will bring freedom to all. But sometimes one must choose between his companions and his destiny. Shinhai abhors his ability to kill, and in the friendships he forges, discovers something potentially more powerful than his magic. Friendship, however, can be a double-edged sword.
Alon, you've selected a favorite quote. If you would, tell us what that is and then explain why it's a favorite.
So I actually chose two quotes that are attributed to the author R.A. Salvatore. He wrote the Drizzt series. He said two things that I've really kept with me, and one of them is written above my writing station at home. It says, if you can quit, then quit. If you can't quit, you're a writer. And apparently he later said, an author is a writer who never gave up. And I really, we have a lot of ups and downs as writers and as authors, the writing block, the inability sometimes to find an agent, or when a book comes out and nothing happens, and we just have to keep our eye on this is a marathon and not a sprint, and just keep going. The adrenaline rush when I'm actually in that creation phase of the book is just amazing. And I'm not sure my wife and kids agree. I disappear a lot, but I love it.
Oh, you're also giving away a book. What are you giving away?
So I'm going to give away two copies of the first book, At the Walls of Galbraith. And we're celebrating the 5th novel in the series that just come out last week. So this will get people started from the beginning, even though each novel is standalone. So if you live in the United States, you can choose either a paperback or an ebook. And if you live abroad, it's an ebook option.
Awesome. So we have two lucky winners in this week's episode. Great. So in order to enter, make sure that you leave a comment after you've watched the episode. That's all it takes, just a short, sweet comment. Tell us what you thought about the show, about the book, anything about it. And that will enter you into the drawing, which I will do on Saturday. And we'll select the 2 lucky winners and notify you immediately. So you'll be reading from your novel At the Walls of Galbraith, which is, as I've mentioned, the first book in your Wycann Masters series. Would you briefly set up the portion you'll be reading from and then share your story with us?
Oh, so I'm going to read from pretty near the beginning. We're only about 30 pages in. Xinhai has run away from his village to escape the conscription to the Emperor's army. He was found by a resistance group, and they assigned a young elf, who is just a year older than him, called Rodan, to take him to his uncle. This is an uncle he's never met. They almost get there when they're attacked by several soldiers, and Rodan sends Xinhai on and stands to defend him so he can escape. Just as that happens, a resistance group comes, grabs Xinhai, and takes him to safety, but they do not go back for Rodan. Xinhai gets furious, turns around, and starts racing back to save his friend. He draws his long sword, which he has no idea how to fight with, and it falls from his hands. And then in his fury, he puts up his hands, and red light comes from his hands and incinerates the soldiers. Very dramatic. And then the resistance will now take him and the wounded Rodan to their camp. And this is where we're going to start at the camp. The slap cracked across Xinhai's face and snapped his head to the side. His skin burnt and his eyes filled with tears. He focused all his strength to hold them back. As he had accompanied his rescuers deep into the woods, Xinhai had bathed in their awe. He assumed it was because of his bravery and prowess, though he chose not to dwell on the fact that he had actually killed people. He tried to put such thoughts out of his mind by looking at the trees. They were bigger and older than those in Morthian Wood where he had grown up. These had gnarled trunks and branches. This was the Kurustan forest and had been around since the age of fairy. Now in the rebel camp, Xinhai was no longer basking in awe, but instead stood before a huge elf with a very bad temper. As long as you are with my people, you will never disobey one of my orders ever again, the elf roared. Whether it comes straight from me or through someone else, you will obey it as law. I don't care who you are. You put good elves and men at risk. What you did was stupid and impulsive. Xinhai took a deep breath. Look, I'm sorry. I put others in danger, but Rodan is my friend, and his voice trailed off as he saw the veins in the huge elf's neck begin to throb. How should I address you? Call me uncle. You're my uncle? Xinhai arched an eyebrow, seeing no resemblance between this elf and his mild-mannered, loving father. The question was met with laughter. Sure, if that works for you, replied a smirking uncle. But uncle is my title. It goes unnoticed in the ears of our enemies. Xinhai stood as tall as he could and willed himself not to look away. Well, if we have finished, uncle, I would like to go see how my friend is doing. After a long pause, uncle cleared his throat. Your guide, he corrected. Sure, you may go to him. We will speak again after dinner. Ilana, please take him to the healer. An elf approximately Xinhai's age approached. She was shorter than him, with dark and shiny hair held away from her face by a plain leather-braided thong. She averted her eyes and signaled him to follow her. Thank you, said Xinhai. I appreciate you taking. Uncle told me to, she injected. Yes, Xinhai stopped talking and surveyed the thick perimeter of trees around the camp. It made him think of the forest that surrounded his village. Thoughts of his parents slipped in. What had happened to them? He shuddered. He might never find out, and perhaps that would be for the best. You shivered, Ilana said, her voice now softer. Do you require a cloak? I was thinking of my parents. Xinhai lowered his head, regretting the admission. I'm sorry. Many of us have lost parents, siblings, and friends. My mother, her voice shook, and she took a deep breath. It never gets any easier. The healer's area is there, beyond those fronds. Her voice was warm now, and Xinhai regretted that they were about to part. Why so far away from everyone else? If we need to hide, the wounded cannot give us away. That's kind of callous, Xinhai impulsively remarked, cringing at the slip. Survival is callous, she snapped. We do what we can for them. We collect herbs and provide them with whatever the healer requests. We can't help them if we're dead, and they can't run away. And the healer, by the way, is an elf. Xinhai stopped, sighed, and rubbed his forehead with his hand. I'm sorry, I seem to be saying all the wrong things. Everything is happening so quickly, and it's all just confusing. A few days ago, I was just an innocent Kalhai, playing and studying in my village. I was about to begin my apprenticeship as a healer. Now look at me, at what I did. I don't understand what's happening, what I'm doing, or even who I am. I don't know what I should be saying, and, well, his voice quivered and became a whisper. I understand why you have no patience for me. Ilana turned to face him. She started to reach out, but changed her mind and withdrew her hand. Instead, she smiled and looked him in the eye for the first time. It's not about patience, she said softly. You scare me. You scare us. She turned and left Xinhai by the entrance to the healer's area. He watched her go before he entered the hut. RoDan lay on a bed of straw off to the side, his face covered with thick green leaves Xinhai identified as comfrey, a herb that helps reduce inflammation and bruises. Xinhai leaned over his friend, who was awake but struggling to open swollen eyes. He put a hand on RoDan's shoulder. How are you, my friend? You look rather dashing. RoDan's attempted smile became a wince. His voice was weak and hoarse. They say you came back for me, that you took down 6 soldiers. Xinhai shook his head. They exaggerate. But you came back for me? Yes, I did. Then you're a fool. I should have died protecting you. Your gratitude is overwhelming. Xinhai half smiled, but RoDan shook his head, causing himself more pain. No, no. His voice was slightly louder now than a rasping whisper. You're the important one. It was wrong. They should have stopped you. They tried, but I can be very persuasive. Stubborn, you mean? You were wrong to come back for me. Why did you do it? Xinhai felt his frustration rise. Because you would have done the same for me. Because maybe your father and others paid for my safety with their lives. That's what we do for our friends. No, RoDan panted. I'm not your friend. I'm your guide. That's what I was assigned to be. Xinhai snapped back. They can choose my guide and protectors, but they can't choose my friends. I want you as my friend, RoDan, and I'd like to be yours. He took a deep breath to calm himself and put his hand back on RoDan's shoulder. Now get some rest. I'm sure I can find someone else to tell me off. In fact, I'm supposed to meet with this uncle after we eat. Xinhai rubbed his still sensitive cheek. I'm hoping he'll use words to express himself this time. RoDan allowed a small smile. Ask him to slap you once, as a favor to your new friend. Xinhai grinned and stood up. I'll look in after I meet with him. As he turned to leave, RoDan said, They say you felled the soldiers with a word and a brilliant red light. What was that power? Xinhai turned back. His face creased and he felt his chest tighten. I don't know, RoDan. It was both awesome and frightening. I need to find out what it is, and I need to find out who I am.
Our guest author last week, YA fantasy author Lori Lynn Roberts, posed a trivia question for us.
My question from last week was, what was the thing that Edmund was given by the Snow Queen that kind of made him different? And it was Turkish delight.
So, Alon, you have a trivia question. What is it?
Okay. J.R.R. Tolkien, when he was writing The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, belonged to a writers group in Oxford. What was the name of that group? I can give you a clue if you Google the gods of fantasy.
Okay, this is good. This is good. Yes. Rarely do we ever really look behind who these people were, but yeah, this is a great question. Okay. So if you don't know the answer to this question, make sure that you subscribe to this YouTube channel so that you find out next episode what the answer is. Or, as Alon mentioned, you can always Google it. So either way. So Alon, any final thoughts you'd like to leave with our listeners?
Yeah, I wanted to share what I've really enjoyed over the last 5 years of writing these novels. I've made a lot of friends, both readers and followers and fellow writers. But I've also made some really good friends in the characters that I write about, and I really care about them, and I'm passionate to share their story. There's rarely a book I write that I don't shed a tear for my characters.
Well, thank you very much for those words. That's great. That's great. All right. I hope you've enjoyed getting to know Alon Shalev just a little bit. As I said, I'm LRW Lee, author of the Andy Smithson Epic Fantasy Adventure Series. Make sure, if you haven't already, you download both the prequel as well as the first ebook in the series, which are free. Click the button to subscribe to the Book Nerd Paradise YouTube channel so you don't miss upcoming authors, giveaways, and answers to trivia questions. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I look forward to seeing you again next Monday.